Hello, and welcome to this special bonus episode of Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 1 of Ishuzoku Reviewers. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So this is an anime about which there was a whole hullabaloo. I seem to recall the company... I don't recall who, Funimation maybe, they were going to, localize this, and then they sort of found out what it was about partway through, and they decided, maybe we better not. Now, I actually, I bought this on Blu-ray, and I thought, it might be nifty to watch. And, I watched the first episode, but then I realized that, the TV in my apartment faced a big open window, and there was no other place to put it, and I did not feel that the blinds sufficiently obscured the inside of my apartment, so I decided, maybe I better not. But, if nothing else, aside from the obvious reasons as to why someone would watch this, I think the premise alone is kind of interesting, because, in a Dungeons & Dragons fantasy type setting like this, there are lots of women, and there is a staggering variety of women, and there's always that sort of trope of the horny bard who tries to get in the pants of basically anything that moves. And this is an anime that's sort of about that, obviously the guy's not a bard, nor are any of his companions so far as I'm aware, but, they have a mission of their own, so to speak. Now I do have to say, maybe Stunk is a rather unfortunate kind of name, it being a past participle and all, but I don't know, fantasy names kind of have to be sort of weird anyways. So this, it seems, is sort of the first big point of contention among the reviewers and, why they sort of have interesting perspectives. Because on the one hand, a 500-year-old elf, she certainly doesn't look her age, whereas this unfortunate old hag is, north of 60 or something like that, and she certainly looks like it, but, to an elf, it makes no difference. And I feel I guess being human, I'm sort of bound to agree with Stunk here, Aura might be all well and good, but, there's the matter of looks, too, you can't just totally disregard that. Now, I have to be honest, I'm not a super big fan of the opening theme, But I do think it's interesting that it's basically, it's kind of like a Village People song, you know. Wouldn't be my first choice, but it's definitely an interesting one. So this is sort of like the core conflict, at least so far, you know, elf women or human women, and who's better. And, you know, they really, like, they can't settle this amongst themselves, you know, they have to sort of rope other people into their argument. I mean, honestly, the way they're talking about this, you know, it's almost like it's substantial, like the argument between tits and ass, but, you know, this is just elf women or human women. Wow. You know, if she's only 50, that's rather unfortunate. That's a rough 50. But even more unfortunate is that, if I recall correctly about this first episode, there really is no clear consensus. And I do enjoy, personally, that everybody sort of like gives a quick breakdown of each of the specimen, for want of a better term, and they give it a rating out of 10. You know, it's very, maybe juvenile isn't the right word, but there's something sort of puerile and silly about it. And I guess it's the juxtaposition of how silly it is with the sort of serious subject matter. It is also interesting that there's sort of like this kind of Dungeons and Dragons racial perspective, I guess, you know, where it's like humans are different from elves, are different from halflings, are different from orcs, and as a result, you know, there's all sorts of different things that they look for or prefer. Like this guy here, you know, he doesn't really like either of them. And, you know, I can understand neither of them being his type, but, makes me wonder what he looks for. Now, I think the most interesting thing is that, you know, they've sort of attracted a crowd, as if people are interested in their reviews. I don't know, I think that's probably, the most interesting part, that, you know, other people would essentially be interested in their views on a bunch of succubus girls. I mean, I guess the nice thing is that even though they sort of virulently disagree about women and all that, they are essentially, you know, adventuring companions, and therefore, you know, they can put their differences aside when the chips are down. You know, not that, like, beyond this scene, I think we're going to get much adventuring. And I do recall being, maybe not impressed, but certainly pleasantly surprised that a scene like this ended up being in here, and one that was so, I guess, startlingly well animated. Not that it's the pinnacle of its craft or anything, but, you know, I came into this show with definite expectations, and this fell outside that in a positive way. I mean, thinking about it a little bit more, it's not entirely surprising, because I believe, and I could be wrong, but the studio that animated this also animated the most recent season of High School DxD, which is, I guess sort of similar in its fundamentals, you know, tits, ass, fighting, monsters, but perhaps a bit more heavy on the latter two. So this is a point of interest, you know. While Stunk and Zell haven't really brought it up, you know, they essentially plan to sample one of everything, if you catch my meaning. And, an angel would certainly be on that list, even if this angel in particular is not up for grabs, so to speak. So, it seems like a little bit of a contrivance, but, the group has grown by one. They've got another person following them along now. Naturally, they get some rather devious ideas about what they might do with an angel that's just sort of hanging around. But I seem to recall that, this takes maybe not a biblically accurate interpretation of angels, but, I don't know, angels aren't exactly human. Yeah, that's a question, alright. Do they have brothels in heaven? And, I feel like, it's a definite maybe. Because, I think there's a case to be made for both. Why would heaven have something so sinful? But on the other hand, if heaven is in fact a paradise, then surely it would have something like that for purposes of enjoyment. I mean, this is all hypothetical and sort of Dungeons and Dragons-esque anyways. Yeah, in retrospect, maybe the angel has made a bad decision in asking these guys for help. However, he does have, I guess, the advantage of biology to ward off any interested parties. At the very least, these guys don't swing that way. Yeah, now, perhaps it might be a bit presumptuous to invite an angel down to the brothels and all that, but, it's just sort of what these guys do for fun, so, you might as well. And perhaps seeing as how it's the first time, that might not be, the best idea, but I don't know, it's like a D&D sort of medieval setting. What else are you gonna do with your time? The poor angel has no idea. If this whole thing was sort of frowned upon, there wouldn't be entire districts of the city devoted to it. Yeah, it really, speaks to the character of these guys that they have favorite girls that they know by name. Yeah, I feel like, this isn't gonna end particularly well. Like, I'd imagine, especially some of these more exotic places would charge exorbitant rates. And, if you don't know what you're doing, it's gonna take some time. And I guess worst of all, the girl's excited by the novelty of it when the poor angel, he clearly isn't all too interested in this. At least, not so far. That is interesting. From an elf's perspective, the interest in cat girls would be primarily because of, their ears and stuff. But I guess, if you're an elf, you're sort of inordinately concerned about ears anyways. I can't imagine that Stunk and Zell would have an altogether different opinion on cat girls. So, it is, I guess, customary that there has to be a bulletin board or something for adventurers. And it seems like there's actual adventures, dangerous stuff, delving into dungeons and all that business. But of course, it seems like nobody's interested in any of that, they just want to know about the review. So they're reviewing dragons. I do have to wonder how precisely they manage that, but, you never know. And there's also an octopus lady. I don't know. That seems like a recipe for disaster, especially for that poor little fellow. Yeah, I don't know. And an octopus girl doesn't seem all that appealing, I've seen more than enough hentai to know where something like that could go, and I don't know. Not my thing. Man, I do feel for Meiji a little bit. She's in the unfortunate position of having to work here and having to put up with all this stuff. Wow. Yeah, poor Meiji, but on the other hand, good on Stunk for actually being paid to do what he's doing. She referred to it as an article, which, I don't know, I think that might be giving it a little bit more credit than it deserves. Oh, I must have misread the subtitles earlier. It was a Dagon, not a dragon. Okay, a Dagon must be a term for like an octopus woman or something. I was gonna say, a dragon, like that's like episode 12 stuff. You can't do that in the first episode. But I guess it makes sense now, Who would have guessed when there's all sorts of tits and ass on the screen, reading subtitles becomes that much more difficult? Yeah, I do hope they review Meiji sometime. I think that would be nice, because, she's certainly not having much fun this episode, partially just because of how everybody's acting, but I feel like, the good ending is to just sort of get in on the fun, earn a couple tens, already she's sort of paying attention to their opinions, that's sort of the first step. Now that's an interesting line of dialogue, excuse our long absence. And that seems to imply to me that they travel far and wide to find all sorts of exotic brothels, which, that's something. Oh dear. Well, I remember this now. They're reviewing Birdmaids, of which Meiji is presumably one, and just sort of like giving up all the secrets, as it were. I don't know. I feel like there are some patrons who are going to put that fell knowledge to poor use. Yeah, I do have to wonder about the sort of society they've got around here, just because Meiji, on the one hand, she's essentially working as a waitress, as opposed to some of her kindred who are, for all intents and purposes, just prostitutes. So I'm wondering, are people like her and other sort of similar kindreds, are they just, freaks for whom the only, viable profession is prostitution for weird people? I get the feeling we're probably not going to get any answers as to the state of society or anything like that, but, it makes me think. I guess Krim does bring an interesting perspective here in that, he and the bird maids both have wings, but, that's kind of where the similarities end. And I guess it does make sense that the bird maids wouldn't be too apt to lay with the Lamia either. Yeah, that has got to be rather embarrassing, to just sort of give a description of your weird genitals and sort of post it up on the message board. I'm not sure if Stunk necessarily deserved that. Maybe like a good solid punch, but not a stool to the head like that, the poor guy. It is rather telling that nobody intervenes. I guess it can't be helped. We do have to sort of check back in on these poor women later. I guess it's easy to say age means nothing when you have elves who are willing to put up with you. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.